Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a first impressions video on a very exciting Spyderco knife. This, as pretty much all of you already know, is going to be my first impressions on the Spyderco Sliverax. And I've been pretty excited to see this one released, and even more excited once I was able to pick this up from Blade HQ, who did ship it to me very quickly. I got to give them some credit because I am all the way in Canada. Here's the box it comes in. You can see Sliverax there and the serial number. Let's move that out of the way and take a look at the knife itself. Now, this is a Paul Alexander design, same guy who gave us the Spyderco Ouroboros. I wasn't a huge fan of that knife. This one, though, I am definitely very much more excited about. Let me kind of work through the features and give you the, all the stuff that's going on and why people have been so excited about it. Then we'll measure it and give you the specs. And then finally, I'll talk about sort of my overall impressions and a couple little issues that I've got. Okay, so full flat ground S30V blade. By the way, I just love the grinder satin finish that Spyderco does. So very attractive, very useful blade. Back here we have the compression lock, and this is one of the reasons people have been so excited about this knife. It is a flipper with a compression lock, and that's pretty cool. It is on bearings, and I think I can probably, let's see. There you go. I can show you those bearings in there now. You can sort of see the bronze caged bearings. The cages really is what you're looking at there. Compression lock is done with this little relief cut, and it is rounded, which is not the worst thing in the world. Back here you do have the flipper tab, which, as you can see, didn't deploy all the way. That's one of the things that's not ideal about this knife. The detent is not quite strong enough, so you have to be pretty intentional about when you flip it. We have laminate carbon fiber over G10 that's very textured and really, I've got to say, I am definitely a big fan of this particular handle choice. Very well done, Spyderco, on that point. We have nested liners. Again, very impressive. I love those nested liners. It just really adds a level of finish to the knife. And the wire clip back here. Pillar construction, tubed lanyard hole, and the clip is reversible for left or right side tip up carry. So those are all the features, and you know what, just on paper, when you hear all those features, I think you're right away, like many of us, pretty excited about this knife, because Spyderco really has given us a lot of the things that we love. And I think they've kind of backed off the, the Ouroboros was fairly extreme in its design. This one is very different and very interesting, but it's not quite as out there as the Ouroboros was, which I do think is kind of nice. Let's go ahead and grab some measurements here before we move on to some of my further thoughts about the knife. Okay, so overall length is just under, and I mean just a hair under 8 inches, really, 7 15/16, and it's actually almost a little more than 15/16. Blade length is 3 3/8 inches, and by the way, the cutting edge is going to be longer than that, almost, let's see, at least 3.5 inches, maybe even a little more. That's a little harder to measure on camera. Let's close her down and see what the handle length is. Handle on here is 4 5/8 inches. So very, very carryable knife. It is just under 1/2 inch thick. And I'll get you a weight on this in a second. Let me put the tape, or let me put the measuring, how about ruler? Let me put the ruler down and we'll bring the scales in. There we go, it is zeroed and it is in ounces. Put this guy here, 3.26 ounces. That's pretty good. Okay, so definitely a major selling point. 3.26 ounces is the weight on that guy, and that is well done. For a knife of this size at 8 inches with a 3.5 inch blade, no complaints whatsoever on the weight. That's actually pretty exceptional. Let me also say, now that we've got the specs out of the way, let me say the level of quality on this knife is very, very high. Every surface that you touch is just rounded and smooth and comfortable. You know, the inside of the spider hole, everything is really, really nice. So I've got to give a lot of credit to the Taichung factory. And guys, you know, I've heard people say, why does Spyderco put Taichung, Taiwan, if I can ever get this to show up here, Taichung, Taiwan on the blade. By the way, there is Paul Alexander's Maker's Mark, Taichung, Taiwan, but that is a real selling point, guys. If you've had a couple of Taichung Spydercos, you know they are exceptionally well done. And so, you know, when I see that, you know, and yeah, anyway, just let me say this. I'm very, very impressed with the quality, with the fit and finish, with the attention to detail here. Very much blown away by that aspect of the knife. Now, let me talk about a couple little things that I'm not crazy about. The first one is the detent. So the detent on this knife is pretty soft. Didn't quite fully deploy that time. If you're intentional about it, and especially if you push button it and sort of preload, you can get it to deploy pretty reliably. But let me try a light switch. This knife does not like to light switch. They really needed to tighten up the detent on that, and I'm not sure why they didn't. I know that they wanted it to be able to be deployed with a spider flick, which this can do very well, okay, or with the thumb. Let me see if I can demonstrate. Yeah, so there you go. Let me do that one more time so you can see. So I'm not gonna flip it, I'm just gonna give it a whip, and you can see that the blade does deploy. So the detent is really not where it needs to be. It's a little too weak. That makes the knife a little tough to flip, which is kind of annoying, you know, because you get a knife like this and you want everything to be dialed in. And frankly, it should be dialed in at this point. So that's a bit of a disappointment. The other disappointment that I have pertains to the lock itself. Now, it's not the compression lock, it's the way they have implemented the compression lock. Namely, they didn't give me enough room to access it. So if this was like maybe this big and a little bit deeper, I would be a lot happier. As it stands, this knife is pretty tough to get to. And now my thumb works a little better. The problem is if I use my thumb, the flipper tab runs into my finger before the knife has sometimes, there we go. So there, see the knife hasn't passed the detent ball yet. And so I've got to fight with it a little bit to get it to close. Okay, if I use my finger, again, I can get to it, but I've really got to push on it to get it in there. And now the knife does close quite nicely. And I will say that aspect, this is pretty nice, being able to flick the knife open and closed. But let me quickly show you a pair of two. And you can see, let's close them both so I don't cut myself. But look at the difference in the size on the access to the compression lock. See how much more room I've got on the pair of two? Now the other thing is, on this, they've nicely rounded this in an effort to make it more comfortable. And that's great, except for one thing. They made it so rounded that my finger has a tendency to want to slide off it instead of catch. Where on the pair of two, I don't even have to think about it. It naturally kind of catches the fat of my finger and I can easily depress that compression lock. So, I'm glad the knife has a compression lock. It's just not quite as well implemented as it could be. All right, so what's my overall take on this knife? I think it's a very, very cool knife. I love the design. I love the fit and finish. I wish that the detent were a little better, and I wish that the compression lock was a little more comfortable to actuate, that it didn't take quite as much effort. What this reminds me of is something all of us have experienced. Have you ever gotten a liner lock where it was hard to access the liner, and therefore you really kind of had to shove your finger in there and push it over? And that's essentially what they've done here, only it's a compression lock and the lock spring is at the back instead of the front. So there are those couple of little issues. Oh, I guess I should have pointed out, guys, that didn't mention the wire clip that is reversible for tip up, right hand or left hand carry. So what do I think of this knife? Very, very cool, very nicely done. I love the design. I love the fit and finish. I love the blade shape. I even love the way the handle is constructed, and I love the features that it's a flipper with a compression lock. However, I do wish that the compression lock was pulled off just a little more comfortably for my fingers, and I wish that the flipper tab and I wish that the detent was just a little stronger so that it would flip more reliably. Now, as I say, if you are intentional about it, it's not that, it's not that I've regularly had issues getting it to deploy, but from time to time, I'll go to flip this knife open, and I've only had it a few hours, and it will fail to deploy. So those are my couple of little issues. Otherwise, though, I love the knife. I'm pretty excited about it still. And I would say this, if you look at this design and go, that is a cool knife, that's the coolest Spyderco I've ever seen, I don't think you should hesitate to buy it because of my issues. I think you should try one for yourself. If you don't like it, I think these are gonna go pretty easily on the secondary market, guys. But I don't know if you'll want to sell it. It's super lightweight. Tons of utility, really nice blade shape, very cool design. There you go, guys. That's my take on the, oh, by the way, I should say, what do I think it's good for? I think this is a nearly perfect everyday carry knife. That's where it fits. I wouldn't call it a tactical knife. I wouldn't call it, I guess it could be a gentleman's folder. It leans a little bit that way with the carbon fiber, but great, great EDC knife. Absolutely perfection along those lines. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.